Hello everybody, my name is Kasei, and I'm here today to showcase my run, or my speedrun rather, of Turok 2 Seeds of Evil, the remastered version for PC. Now this remastered version has quite a lot of differences in comparison to the old N64 and PC version, notably some new mechanics that we'll be abusing heavily throughout the run, as well as just how the game runs in general, and some changes in terms of level design. Starting off, there's a new mechanic called ledge grab, which allows Turok to grab ledges. And there's another mechanic called quick warp, which we'll get into later. For now though, this remastered version features modern controls, additional effects such as motion blur and bloom, as well as a steady 60 frames per second cap. Now, this is the first stage of the game, which is called Port of Adia, and this is the only level in the game we'll actually be doing everything in, aka completing all the mission objectives and collecting every single item. We don't have to do that in later levels because of the new mechanic called Quick Warp, which allows us to warp between checkpoints all over the world. These checkpoints are located in every level. There's usually 3 of them, and when you activate one, you gain access to a warp function, and if you've activated another checkpoint, you can warp between those two, and then so it creates kind of a network. Anyways, you can see right away that we're strafe running mostly in this run. It is actually faster to do that than holding straight forward in terms of running, as it increases your movement speed. And as you've already noticed twice now, I've had to kill 2 enemies in order to open doors. Usually if I kill an enemy, it's because it's a requirement in order to progress. At the start of this room, what I did was actually perform a quick save / quick load. And doing that in certain areas in the game will actually allow you to run through doors as they are opening up. Whereas if you wouldn't do it, you'd have to wait for the doors to actually open. So coming up right here, you can see that I go for the headshot on that entrail, which opens the door right behind him. Most resets in this level actually happens because you are missing headshots on the entrails, and sometimes it's simply because they refuses to die. Now the mission objectives in Port of Adia are simple. You have to activate 3 distress beacons by running into them while carrying power cells. And you have to save 4 children. Doing so will allow you to enter the blue exit portal, which will take you to the totem defense. Normally, if you do not complete all mission objectives in a stage, the game will tell you that you've failed your mission and you have to backtrack the level and find what you missed. But the quick warp function that we'll see later in a checkpoint actually bypasses that check completely. There are always keys to find in every level. Port of Adia has 7 keys in total if you count the Primogen key, but 6 level keys, which opens up other levels from the main hub. We need to collect these keys in order to progress in the game. There is no way for us to clip through walls or through any other means bypass barriers. Turok 2, the remastered version, is actually running on the same engine, or at least an updated version of the same engine as Turok 1 was ran on, also developed by Night Dive Studios. This is also another room where I do a quick save / quick load combination. Not because it helps where I am right now, but it does help later on at a small waterfall where a door will slowly open. Because of the quick load, I will be able to walk straight through the door. There are no penalties in terms of dying other than being reverted back to a checkpoint in this game. So Death Warp is a very common strategy and is mandatory in some areas, actually, to make sure we don't get soft lock. While we don't do a whole lot of glitching in this game, we do things earlier than intended in most levels. All wooden bridges in this game have some weird collision thing going on, where you most of the time don't even have to hit a button to activate them. And you can walk on thin air where the bridge would be spawned. Coming up here is a perfect example of this, where we will ledge grab an invisible bridge that hasn't been put down yet, and from it jump up to save a child. The invisible part of this is actually set at an angle, so you have to do a fairly precise jump in order to get it. Once you're on it, it's very easy and you have to go out of your way to fall down. Now, the quick load function, or mechanic I should say, it can actually crash your game if you attempt to do it as the mechanic is being performed. So let's say I go and hit a switch that is gonna open a door after a couple of seconds. If I, for any reason, would, during that time frame, do a quick save, quick load, before the actual gate has opened, the game will crash. This run is played on easy mode because it reduces the general factor of bad luck within the speedrun. The only two categories that are similar to easy are normal and hard. All they do is increase the attack frequency of enemies as well as the amount of damage you take. But the most unique setting in this game that is also exclusive to the remastered version is hardcore, which leaves you with only one life, and it increases all the enemies' damage and health. Coming up here, I have used the ledge grab in order to get up to that switch, and then I jump on a crate and perform something we call a walk-off jump. A walk-off jump is when you run off a ledge and jump mid-air. It is a mechanic that was within the Turok 1 Remastered as well. However, you cannot perform the jump whenever you please. You have a very small time window in order to execute it as you go into the air. Coming up is the final section of Port of Adia, where we have to hit 4 switches. And you'll notice that I'm sometimes running faster while I'm on the wooden floor. This is something that was seen in Turok 1 as well, but nothing we really understood why it happens. But certain kind of floor makes Turok go faster or slower. Coming up now is the totem defense. We're gonna exit the level as we've fulfilled every mission objective. And doing this will teleport us to the hub. Now, totem defense, all you have to do is kill a certain amount of enemies before they destroy the totem. This used to be one of the harder sections in the original game of Turok 2, but has been dumbed down quite a bit in this version. So from the hub, I strafe to the left immediately to activate the checkpoint station, which now means if I find a checkpoint within one of the stages, I can use that checkpoint to warp back to the hub without finding an exit portal. And this is ultimately what bypasses the whole check for the mission objectives being completed, and also skips any boss fights that isn't the Primogen. I should also mention that the audio levels within this game are kind of bad as of right now. Adon's voice is actually on moderately high volume right now, but you won't be able to hear her very well through cutscenes. These cutscenes are unskippable, by the way. So starting off the Death Marshes, there's two possible paths you can take here at the start. The one I'm taking is slightly slower, but a lot safer. And it doesn't involve a trick, which is called water jumping. Water jumping is when you hop on the surface of water and you repeatedly press jump. It's not frame perfect, but it is pretty hard to execute in many times in a row. Why it is such a hassle on this stage is because the water here is toxic and we can't enter it without dying. So if you mess up one of these water jumps, you will eventually die. However, this green goo right here is different. It's not like actual water. It's more like a I'm not sure what to call it, actually. It's poison, and if you stay in it for too long, you start taking damage. The damage you take is based on your difficulty as well, so since we're on easy, I would take about 50 damage if I stood in it for too long. While as if I wasn't normal, I would be one-shot instantly. Other than that, there's not a whole lot going on in this level, in this particular category. Just a lot of strafe running. But I do make sure to go out of my way right here to activate a checkpoint station, which will be used later in the game. Up ahead on the bridge, I jumped down at this very particular section and then up again, simply because if you take that route on the bridge at all times, one section of the bridge will actually break and a purlin will come out of it, slowing you down because the bridge breaks and you're gonna be stuck in the mud. This is what's called tower skip. Normally you're supposed to climb a ladder up top, which actually costs quite a bit of time, but since we have ledge grab, we can just grab the edge of that and jump around it using a walk-off jump. This is where we find the shredder and the plasma rifle. For this level, we'll be using the plasma rifle simply because it's powerful enough to one-shot purlins that uses the swords, which are the only kind of purlins we'll ever actually have to kill. However, the most useful weapon in the speedrun is probably the shredder, because regular shredder ammo can be used to trigger switches and levers. For those of you that don't know what the shredder does, it essentially shoots out a beam, and when it hits a wall or any physical object or an enemy, it will break and scatter into several small shots that will bounce around the room, ricochet style, and these small bullets are able to hit switches and activate them. You can also put explosive ammo in it, which turns it into one of the strongest weapons in the game. Right there I did a walk-up jump in order to reach the eagle feather earlier than intended, as well as get to the portal activator. In every level there is one feather, except for Port of Adia, and we have to collect these feathers and get them to the temples in order to unlock abilities. This particular ability allows us to actually enter toxic water without dying. We will gather all feathers except for one in the speedrun. The one we won't be getting is the Heart of Fire, which is located in Lair of the Blind Ones, because we don't have to have any kind of lava resistance. There's a trick here you can do while jumping on a rock and then jumping straight up to the warp pad, but for me it's fairly inconsistent, so I'm not doing that yet. Using explosive ammo, you can actually shoot the small raptors here through the gates before they open, because of the splash damage provided by it. Now, as you can see, it says mission failed because I haven't completed any of the mission objectives. In this mission, you normally have to save 5 soldiers, as well as blow up 3 armories. However, since I haven't done that, it cast me back out, and I have to go find a checkpoint and warp back to the hub using the quick warp mechanic if I want to leave the level. Now, at a checkpoint, you will meet Adon, who will be able to restore your health and your ammunition, as well as warp you around. In the original game, you only had one of these refills per level, but in this remastered version of the game, you have unlimited, no, not unlimited, but you have one refill of both per checkpoint rather than per level. The River of Souls is my favorite stage in the game, and it has the best soundtrack, I think. It is a fairly complex level in terms, or from a speedrunning perspective, and I would consider it one of the harder ones to actually do well on, because there's a lot of tricky shots you have to do with the shredder, and you have to do them fast. We'll be banking shots a lot, which means shooting explosive shells on walls and hoping it actually hits an enemy that we can't see yet. The reason we do this level as the third level is because we get the shredder earlier in Death Marshes. Getting the shredder earlier actually makes this level a whole lot easier. Normally, if you'd go from chronological order of levels, you'd be doing this one as your second level. So starting off, we're gonna skip the Triceratops ride because it's actually faster to just move on with the explosive shredder. This area is full of turrets that you have to destroy in order to open gates, which is why I'm shooting a whole bunch of them. Worth noting is the fact that this remastered version allows you to choose either the N64 soundtrack or the PC soundtrack, and I play with the PC soundtrack specifically for this song. Now, all the triggers for some of these events to happen, such as the turret spawning or the bridges being pulled up, is actually based on entering a specific area right before them. And if you take way too sharp corners in a lot of these areas, you will miss the triggers most of the time. Ultimately, the goal with the shredder is to fire shots that bounces as much as possible in order to reduce the amount of firing you have to do. So best case scenario, if there's 2 switches, you want to shoot 1 shot to get both of them. Now you'll see me continuously jump as I'm walking on ledges. Walking upwards on ledges and downwards actually slows you down by a tad amount, but jumping actually negates that somewhat and makes you just as fast as running normally would. Most bridges in this level also lack collision, even when they're not active, so we can just jump past them. What I performed right there was a water jump, although that one is completely safe, considering we did Death Marshes first and got the talisman for Breath of Life. That jump you couldn't make in the original version of the game. That's also another difference that I forgot to mention. In this version of the game, in comparison to the N64 and PC one, Turok's movement is generally faster. This allows us to make jumps that we normally wouldn't be able to make, even without the walk-off jumps. Now, in terms of swimming, if there is a hole in a wall and you're underwater and you're pushing towards the wall, you will actually be boosted downwards. This doesn't apply to every wall in the game, but it is a nice boost, and that's why you'll see me rocket down quite a bit. Now going up, that's a totally different story. Then it doesn't activate. Right here is a perfect example of when I'll use the shredder to trigger a switch early without seeing it. By simply shooting that wall, the bullets ricochet off on the switch, lowering the bridge as I get there. The run is full of these small little trick shots that we can do. It was a nasty body block there. Now for this soul gate, we're actually just gonna do one fairly precise shot with an explosive shredder, causing it to bounce up and down repeatedly, causing splash damage through the wall, which inevitably destroys it. You may have noticed thus far into the run that sometimes I run really, really fast, and sometimes I'm actually pretty slow when I'm running, even though all I'm doing on both of those scenarios is just strafe running. Currently, there's an issue with the game, which we speedrunners call speed boosts. We don't know exactly what's causing it, but it seems to be tied to FPS. So whenever the game would drop frames, to compensate for that, it would increase the game's speed overall. So Turok's movement speed would be insane. These happen randomly. It's nothing we can trigger on our own, unfortunately. And they can last a random amount of time. While underwater, the fastest form of movement is simply pumping the forward button while strafing. Now, pumping it means pushing it, waiting a couple, or rather waiting like a second, not even a full second, and then pushing it again repeatedly. Holding it just doesn't really do anything at all. So this little section here is actually one of the hardest sections in this level, where we have to kill the undead with as few shots as possible in order to advance. This is where the first Sister of Despair is, and we have to kill her in order to gain access to the last section of the level. So this is where I bank quite a few shots to kill 3 bigger zombies, which will trigger the opening of that door where the Sister of Despair spawns. And I need to make sure that I one-shot her using an explosive shell. Now, there's something in this game as well that we call ladder boost. And what that is when an enemy collides with you, usually the small compound raptors, the very, very small ones, when they collide with you as you're climbing a ladder, they seem to be pushing you through the wall. And when that happens, since the engine handles clipping in this game in a very weird fashion, it will actually push Turok towards the nearest ground that he can stand on in the direction he was going. So if I'm climbing up a ladder from the bottom, and let's say a compound raptor collides with me and pushes me slightly through the wall, the game will detect that, push me up the ladder instantly, immediately, where I can stand normally. And that'll be that. It doesn't always happen. It's something we go for on some ladders, but not all of them. Usually it's faster to jump on top of a ladder in order to get it, but if there's a lot of compound raptors, trying to get the boost is a good idea because it saves a considerable amount of time in certain areas. So we're nearing the end of the River of Souls. We are currently in the palace area and we're on our way to get the eagle feather, but we have to activate the portal first. The two remaining Sister of Despairs are found in this section of the level, but we're gonna skip them completely and go for the usual quick warp in order to exit the level. I am being quite conservative with my ammo right now because I want to be able to use this later on in another level because we're gonna have to backtrack. The whole point of getting these eagle feathers is mostly to get at or gain access to Primogen keys. The Primogen keys are used to unlock the final boss encounter of the game, and they are scattered across every level. There is a total of 6 of them. However, most of them are locked as you first approach them. So for example, the Port of Adia one, you cannot reach without the talisman I'm about to get, which is the Leap of Faith ability. Now that we've found the Primogen key, I can proceed to the exit which is found right behind this water. Now we're gonna warp back to the Port of Adia in order to get the first Primogen key in the game. To kill these 2 entrails in order to open the door. Sadly, I missed the first shot. Now we're actually gonna enter the Hive of the Mantids, which is the 5th stage in this game. We're gonna do that before Lair of the Blind Ones. Actually, it is level 5. This is probably the hardest level mechanically in the game, and also the most broken one. This is, I think, the only level that actually differs depending, the route differs depending on what difficulty you're on, because we're gonna be using a lot of death warps in here, and that is not feasible in hardcore. Anyways, the mission objectives in this area, what they want you to do is actually bomb a main computer while destroying I cannot English, 3 queen embryos located in the level, but we're not gonna do any of that. Nor are we gonna do the boss battle in here, which is the Queen Mantid boss battle. Starting off, we have to destroy 4 turrets in order to gain access to the level itself. Now, it is possible to kill all of these in 2 shots by having them bounce, but that's really hard. What you're about to witness now is something we call wall shots. We are able to crouch in many different sections of this level in order to shoot through the walls, so we can shoot the generators earlier than intended. The generators in this level powers up doors, essentially. So when we destroy one of these, a door will unlock. And since we can shoot through walls, we can destroy them way earlier than intended, which could soft lock you if you don't have any extra lives and you can't death warp. But luckily, we're gonna have access to all of that. This is probably one of the more confusing levels as well from a casual standpoint, simply because of the fact that almost every room looks the same. Now right here, we're gonna be doing our very first death warp shortly. So we're gonna jump down here and destroy a turret in order to gain access to this door. Then we're gonna pick up the explosive shredder and destroy a generator inside, while jumping off the cliff in order to teleport back up. Since we destroyed that generator, we can now gain access to this green section. I fire off a shot immediately to kill 2 mantids to spawn, which is required to die in order to advance. This is where we get the grenade launcher. The old routes for this game actually had you get the grenade launcher in the death marshes, but that proved to be a much slower strategy and not as useful. I'm equipping the grenade launcher here because coming up is a guy I have to kill in order to advance, and I have to make sure that it goes really quickly. He will always spawn in the same spot, so the grenade launcher is a really good bet for that. Here's one of those checkpoints again, but we're not gonna use that. The old route actually used that checkpoint to refill explosive shells, but there is no need for that anymore considering we found more on the way. This is another wall shot coming up. Fairly slow setup right there. That one is the hardest one of them to get because it's far away and it's pretty hard to see. When I'm crouching like that, I cannot hold crouch. The game simply does not allow me to do that. So I have to repeatedly press crouch in order to see where I am aiming at. Now coming up is a cycle that used to be really hard to get, but it's pretty easy nowadays. There's an elevator right now going up and down that we're trying to reach right before it goes up. And with optimized movements, you can make this very easily. As you can see, I just caught it. And we'll be on our way to destroy yet another force field generator using the grenade launcher. This is where we'll be using the eagle feather, or finding the eagle feather, rather, and then perform a death jump, or death warp. What I just did right here, you cannot do on hardcore. You have to do the level here as intended. Otherwise you will get stuck there. Now we're gonna go and get the Whispers Talisman, which allows us to float in the air for a set amount of time, or not a set amount of time, but once we go on top of a talisman pad with the whispers, it will send us flying through the air. Now we're just gonna head to the exit of this section, where we'll be getting the cerebral, I can't say its name, cerebral boar. However, we won't really be using it. I only picked this one up because there's another one coming up right ahead, but if I don't have the cerebral bore and I pick it up, it's gonna automatically switch to that. And I want to be able to switch to the grenade launcher immediately. In this room, you actually have to kill all of the manted soldiers in order to advance. And there's also explosive shells behind one of them. Now coming up is actually my biggest fail in the run, mainly because I missed that one shot on the big manted soldier, which cost me some time. I was supposed to make a cycle here, jumping on the platform, but I was way too late. However, it was fine. I managed to get it on the second cycle, and that is okay. We're actually gonna do a through-the-wall trick shot here too, although this one is a bit different. So we just aim at a very specific corner of that structure, and the shot will bounce inwards onto the force field generator, destroying it, giving us access to the later section of the level. Now here, it's preferable to have more grenade launcher shots, because you can shoot these generators, which I missed, unfortunately, earlier than intended. Grabbing the Scorpion Puncher, we're actually gonna have most use of this weapon in this level. We're not gonna be using it a whole lot at all later in the game. These shots were out of pure accident. This little section here, you actually have to blow these eggs up using guns, which is one of the only areas I found the Scorpion launcher to be useful, as well as to kill mantids that are blocking you as you're about to climb these vines. So now we're entering one of the sections where one of the queen embryos actually are. The first one. However, we're skipping it completely and just jumping straight to the end. I used a grenade launcher here because it one-shots several eggs at once, and we're also going to try to get a very specific shot coming up shortly in order to unlock the room that leads to a checkpoint. So in this room right here, you can fire off one shot and hit both of those manted soldiers to kill them, which opens the door. But sadly, the second mantid went out of his way to dodge. And that was Hive of the Mantids. Now we're gonna enter Lair of the Blind Ones. Lair of the Blind Ones is actually one of the easier stages, but it does have a particular jump that gives a lot of people issues. It is also not at all as foggy as you might remember it if you played the original N64 version, making it a lot easier to navigate. While it does suffer a little bit from the same problems that Hive of the Mantids has, as in, you know, every area looking the exact same, it is actually quite easy to differentiate on where to go. And there's some tricks that we use to make it a whole lot smoother as well. This is also the only eagle feather that we actually skip. It is not necessary at all, because the water jump mechanic, or the water hop so to say, where we could jump on toxic water even though we didn't have the talisman, kind of applies here too with the lava. We can jump on top of the lava for a very short time. I think the time frame is about 1.5 seconds in total that you're allowed to touch lava before you die. We're using that to our advantage and simply jumping past it. While in the Whispers transition, you are not allowed to fire your gun, nor can you really move. The game is playing itself for you right now, which is also kind of bad in a sense, because it means that enemies have free shots at you, such as this guy right here. A lot of this level is simply going around finding an item and putting it in place in order to open a door. The level is fairly linear, although it may not seem like it. The best part about this level is the fact that you don't really have to conserve your explosive shells. All you have to worry about is having 3 of them at the end of the stage. Other than that, they're not really used a whole lot, and I can easily use them to dispose of enemies really quickly. In this room, you're supposed to be trapped with this giant spider, but the explosive shells just kind of ruins them. And now we're going to abuse the ricochet of the regular shredder shots as well. By running into this wall, or swimming rather, the gun actually gets put behind the wall, and you can shoot between the 2 objective markers, which is also a new feature in this game. I completely forgot about that. In order to hit the switches and have the gate open, rather than going into 2 separate tunnels and then firing at them. Now, since Lair of the Blind Ones features a lot of small tunnels, it is actually very easy for enemies to block you, so I do tend to try to kill them before I get to them. Body blocks in Turok games are typically one of the big time losses you're gonna have, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. And in this room, you can simply, because of Turok's increased movement speed in this version, run past the room. Behind you, it's actually going to close. The game thinks that you're not going to be able to run past it, but you are. Coming up is what the community has dubbed the meme jump. This jump is fairly hard, and it skips, I think, 2 minutes of gameplay getting this right. So we always quick save before attempting it. If you fall down, there's no way to get back up. But the jump was made first try this run, which was really nice. Coming up is the underwater section, and we can hit a switch earlier using explosive shells, and then going down, getting the torpedo launcher. This allows us to skip one of these sections here. You can actually jump through this wooden platform if you have enough speed, and you can also jump directly on top of the climbing wall with enough speed as well. It's really hard to do so, well, at least for me anyway. Coming up is one of the harder sections of this level. These little booster pad thingies, they are quite disorienting because they spin you around. And if you fall off, you die. And you cannot go back up this path if you do. So, normally it's recommended to quick save before that, but quick saving also, in many levels, takes quite a lot of time. So for example, in Port of Adia, quick saving takes less than a second, while if you would quick save in River of Souls, it would take 2 seconds, which is also why we aren't using that mechanic everywhere. Even though it has the same effect everywhere, it doesn't necessarily save time because of the increased loading times. So now we're at the lava section of the level. You can bypass all of this normally as well without the use of the Heart of Fire. It's just faster to go here and then jump 3 times to get on this little platform. It is worth mentioning though that if you die while jumping on the lava, you won't have as much time the second time you're trying it. So it goes from 1.5 seconds to like 0.75, I do believe, which makes it ultimately a lot harder, but still doable. Because there are entrails coming up, I pick the plasma rifle to take care of them, since it one-shots them, and also to save explosive shells. Now I didn't really have to do that, but it's a safe thing. Now this can also be one of the more frustrating parts of the game, because sometimes Turok likes to bump into the wall above him here, or roof rather, before jumping on the platforms. And when that happens, he's actually going to get pushed down. So this is a section where you wanted at least 3 shots for, because you're going to have to kill 4 Nalas and 1 Blind Guardian. And that was Lair of the Blind Ones. Fairly solid stage. Quite a lot of hiccups though, so can definitely be improved. Here we're gonna refill our ammo, and we are gonna go ahead and enter the Primogen's Lightship, which is the last stage in the game. It is the longest by far, and probably, it's not one of the most difficult ones. It's just very confusing. It's very hard to learn because, well, once again, everything looks the same regardless of where you are. This level is divided up into 4 different sections, and we're gonna have to revisit a couple of those. But the way the level is laid out is you have to enter Sector 1 in order to unlock Sector 2, which unlocks Sector 3. And in the end, you know, it unlocks Sector 4. Now, normally, in a casual playthrough, what you would do here is you'd go around collecting crystals in order to stop generators, as well as destroy a couple of things in order to get out of the lightship. However, what our goal is in all of the sectors is simply to find one button that is tied to an ability. Every button that is tied to an ability leads to the Primogen key chamber that we have to unlock, which is what we're doing exactly. So starting off, This level is all about movement. There is not really a whole lot of tricks going on here that could potentially ruin your run. There are certain rooms that are more dangerous than others, but mostly you're gonna lose time either to A, getting lost, or B, getting blocked. It is also very important to understand that in this level you are allowed to shoot more than normal because there's a lot of ammo to be found. Here we're gonna abuse the ledge grab in order to get up here way faster than intended. Normally you're gonna have to walk around the entire room. You'll also notice me having my map up for quite a lot of this level. This is simply because I want to cut corners as close as possible. So, as we go on the talisman pad, we can now tell that this switch is actually linked to the Primogene key, which is found at the main hall of the stage. So, Sector 1's switch that is important is tied to Whispers. Sector 2's is tied to the Vision, which is what we're going to find in this level. Sector 3 is tied to the Leap of Faith ability, and Sector 4 is tied to the Breath of Life ability. Again, giving us more reason to skip the Heart of Fire, because there are no lava sections on this, or in this level. Jumping on top of that switch right there opens that door. A lot of this is much like Lair of the Blind Ones, where you go to one point of interest that unlocks a door. The level per se is not really that big in terms of rooms and stuff. It is mostly big because you have to go around everywhere and collect stuff and open stuff. The same logic in that air tunnel that I was just in applies to the water thing. Or rather, the water thing applies to that, where if you're going upwards or downwards, and there's a hole on the wall, and you're sticking to the wall, you will actually be boosted in the direction you're going. Which is also sometimes a curse, because in these little air shafts that we're going through, or the ventilation tunnels, there are sections where you go up and down. And if you hit the walls in there, there's a slight chance the wall can cause you to teleport around. So since we don't have the talisman needed for this sector, which is Sector 2, all we're doing really is finding the ending to it so we can go into Sector 3 as fast as possible. Sector 3 is one of the more confusing sectors, and usually is the one that takes the most amount of time to get used to. In this room, you actually got locked in, but you don't have to do anything other than hit a switch in order to get back out. You can kind of see in these tunnels how I glitch a little bit up and down. It is mostly because of the whole water logic thing. Now, if you were to enter or like run into any of these fans, as well as the lasers, you would start taking a lot of damage. If you were on any other difficulty than easy, most of these things would kill you in a matter of seconds, but considering this is easy mode, that's not really a thing. And we're gonna abuse that fact later on at the end of this level. So right here, we found the Leap of Faith talisman, which means there's a switch here that we need to press. We do so by just running into the monitor. The triggering, or the bounding boxes, I guess, for the triggers, they're all like a little wonky in this stage, so you can actually go behind the consoles and actually press the button. This room, I'm not using the most optimal of strats. I'm using a little altered version of it, but if you're not quick enough in this big room, the doors are actually going to close on you, and you're going to waste about 10 seconds waiting for them to open up again. Now we're going to enter the final sector of the level, which is Sector 4. This is probably the most straightforward sector in the entire level. I killed that guy because that's where we're gonna exit through there later on in the level, and he can potentially body block you for days if you give him the chance to. Now right here, there's actually a cycle that I'm trying to make. As soon as I enter this room, an elevator starts going up and down, and I want to make sure that I reach it at a time where it's down so I can jump on it directly. However, the way I do that is by jumping up and down the stairs. Going up stairs, just like slopes in this game, slows you down. And in order to avoid that, we jump. So I just made that cycle because of the jumps I did earlier. Now that wasn't really a fail, but it is possible to ledge grab before the bridge comes up. It's very hard. I've only managed to do it a couple of times at best, but never in an actual run. Right now I'm actually out of explosive shells because I need to use one for this place. The reason you have to destroy this assembly plant is because it opens a door that gives you access to 2 blue crystals that we need to advance later in the level. And normally I would not be using the Scorpion launcher there, but it turned out to be a fairly nice alternative to what I needed to do. So now we're gonna go and unlock the Vision's power, which is the last Eagle Feather power that we're gonna get in the game, and it only has 2 uses as far as I'm concerned. Now we're gonna go to the ending of Sector 4, where the last switch is for the Primogen key. Well, not really last in the order that we're doing it, but normally in the order of doing things. We do a jump here on the stairs, and this is actually where we get the PFM layer. The PFM layer is a gun that shoots out mines that react to one another, and they're only gonna be used at one particular area in the game, and we're gonna fire 2 of them to take down the Primogen. So now we're backtracking back to Sector 2. And what we're actually gonna do here is we're gonna go back through the exit of Sector 2 and not the standard entrance we took as we, you know, entered it. This is because it places us way closer to the actual talisman pad. And it also saves a bunch of time because we don't have to do the ventilation shafts, or the ventilation tunnels rather. Instead, we spawn on the other side of it. And on this side, we can actually activate the bridge going back, so it would actually be a lot faster for us if we decided to do the entrance path on the way back. So we're gonna perform a death warp here, because now we want to lose health. We are actually going to lose health for the purpose of doing another death warp, but in another level. Again, you might have noticed down there that my movement speed kind of increased quite a bit. I got one of those speed boosts I talked about earlier that was related to frame drops. Now once we get the Primogen key, we're actually gonna re-enter Sector 1 again, because Sector 1 has access to a checkpoint that's really close by, to a couple of red lasers, which we will stand in to lower our health by quite a bit. So we're gonna go through the exit once more. So we're right here at the lasers, and we're gonna jump down. And preferably you want to get below 20 HP, but not too low. 15 is a pretty good sweet spot. 13 is still quite a bit much, but it will do. So we're actually gonna go back to Death Marshes 3 to get the Primogen Key 3 from there. We couldn't get it before because you had to have the Breath of Life talisman allowing you to go underwater. And while we could have backtracked for it, we didn't have the torpedo launcher then, but we do now, which is a lot faster than simply swimming. We're gonna swim through this tunnel, and then we're gonna end up at a bunch of purlins up above. Now, it's pretty much impossible to get killed on the way to the Primogen Key, but we do want to get damaged, so the death warp goes faster. I almost missed the Primogen Key there, which could have been bad, but it put us right back at the checkpoint, allowing us to just backpedal. Now we're gonna go into the Hive of the Mantids, because that's where the last key we're missing is, and the breeding grounds. And I'm gonna make sure to equip my grenade launcher right here, because we're gonna have to destroy a couple of eggs again. And I do want to save my explosive shells for the final battle that is coming up very shortly. Getting the last Primogen Key, we do a death warp to get back to the teleport pad, and then we will proceed to run back towards the same checkpoint we did earlier. Now we're gonna go back to the hub and enter the final stage of the game, the very final room, which is the Primogen's room. The last boss. Now, the Primogen is a very random fight, and we haven't completely figured him out as of right now. He has 3 stages, or 3 phases, where you have to hit different kind of body parts in order to damage him. But first, he has a transition phase, where you cannot harm him. He has a couple of attacks that can be dangerous, but you shouldn't even see them in a run if you're doing things correctly. So starting off, he's gonna be there up at his console, and he's gonna use 2 attacks. The first one is he's gonna spawn bombs from the ceiling, which explodes as they, collide with the ground. And these bombs let out smaller bombs that goes towards your direction. He's gonna cast a few of these bombs, and then he's gonna open the gates you can see to the sides of him with the blue lights. And he's gonna send out these small little spaceships that are gonna fly towards you. I used a firestorm cannon to kill these quickly. What I'm doing right now is actually kind of a mistake. You're not supposed to wait to kill that last one, but you are supposed to do it for a chance to skip a phase later. So now I bring out my explosive shredder, and the first weak point the Primogen has is his tentacles. They are pretty small and can be pretty hard to hit, but every time you hit him, you have to shoot his head or he'll regenerate. And what is supposed to happen during this fight is that every time you break a tentacle, he's gonna go into a regen phase. So there should be a total of 4 regens. Sometimes though, you can shoot more than 1 tentacle in 1 shot, and then his AI gets kind of messed up. Which is kind of what's happening here. But in total, we got 4 regens on phase 1, which is okay. You can get 3, but it's very, very, very odd when it happens. Like, it's random. So now phase 2 starts, or not really, the transition phase starts, which is a little bit different. It's the same attacks, but he does them in a different order, and he does them more often. Now, this is where you actually want to leave one of those flyers alive until the gates close. Doing this gives you a chance to actually skip the next bomb phase. So this is why I'm intentionally leaving it alone until the gates close. So if done correctly, he would start flying at this point back onto the arena for you to kill him. However, I did not do it correctly, or I got screwed by chance, basically. So now his weak spots are his arms to the right. A lot easier to hit than the tentacles. And usually this phase only requires 2 regens. If you're unlucky, you may need 3, but usually doesn't happen. Another change to this phase is that every time he goes into the regen stage, he's gonna send out the small little flyers. Now the fight is pretty much over at this point. We have 1 final phase to go through, but if you remember in the light chip where I picked up the PFM layer, I also mentioned that there's only 1 use for that gun in the entire game. Or at least in this run, and that's about to happen in this phase. So we do all of this like normal. As far as I'm aware, you cannot skip phases here using the light chips or the small little flyers, that is. So I'm gonna equip the PFM layer, and I'm gonna get ready to fire 2 shots in the middle soon, after we've dealt with more flyers. Now since this is the very last phase, I try to destroy them as fast as possible, and because I don't need any explosive shells. So we fire off 2 in the middle, which will react when he runs over them, and then we're gonna use the explosive shredder to shoot his head as he runs past them. Now I completely forgot to stop the timer, but the timer ends, or it stops on the very last hit on the Primogen, which was 1:10:22, not 1:10:33. And that was Turok 2, Seeds of Evil, the remastered version. This is, of course, the ending you get if you were to use cheats in the game. In the original version of the game, if you cheated in order to kill the Primogen, you would get this ending, where Adam basically tells you that he's still alive because the totems did not obliterate him. We get that ending as well because we didn't finish the totems sections in every stage. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching this run. This game was developed by Night Dive Studios, who also did the Turok 1 remaster. They've done a fantastic job at it. I think everyone who has ever had any interest in Turok should definitely go and give this game a go. And you should try speedrunning it too, because it's really fun at times. This has been Growth Kasei. Thank you so much for watching this speedrun. You can catch me live at twitch.tv/growthkasei, where I do these attempts live